I didn't raise my voice when the HOA president stood at the edge of my property holding a pair of wire cutters like some kind of trophy still warm from the metal fence she and her cronies had sliced through at dawn. She wanted me to explode, to lose my temper, to give her the scene she could use against me. Instead, I handed her a rolled-up document, fresh from the county clerk's office, and told her to read the header. "State Registered Boundary Survey," I said, and right beneath it, injunction against encroachment. Her eyes skimmed the words, and the flush on her face drained until she looked like chalk. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once, silence worked in my favor. It hadn't started like this. For me, this land was supposed to be the end of noise. I'd bought it after years of grinding city life sirens. At all hours, stacked apartments, traffic that sucked your soul dry. When I found this parcel tucked against the tree line at the edge of town, I thought I had stumbled into a pocket of peace. It wasn't grand, not a sprawling ranch or anything like that. Just a few acres with a modest house and enough room for a garden and a workshop. The fence that ran along the property had been there since the 70s. A simple wire and post line my predecessor put up to keep livestock contained. I didn't move there for battles. I moved there to breathe, to dig my hands in the soil, to grow tomatoes without an audience, and maybe to hear my thoughts for once. For the first few months, it was perfect. I'd wake up early, brew coffee on the porch, watch the fog burn off the field. I patched up the workshop, planted some fruit trees, even set up a hammock in the back. I kept to myself, and for a while, the neighbors seemed fine with that. The HOA wasn't even on my radar. I knew the subdivision behind me had one of those boards, with their newsletters and bake sales and community rules, but I was technically outside their domain. My deed didn't list them. My land had existed long before they paved their cul-de-sacs. I thought I was free of that kind of nonsense. The first sign that I was NT came in the form of a paper flapping on my gate one windy afternoon. It looked official enough. Letterhead bullet points. Bold words like, "Violation notice." According to the HOA, my fence encroached on common property, and I was instructed to remove it immediately, or face fines. I remember standing there reading it 3 times, baffled. My fence had been in the same place since the Carter administration. I wasn't under their HOA, and yet here they were, ordering me around like I was a child caught sneaking cookies. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they mixed up lot numbers. I actually chuckled, peeled the notice off, and tossed it in the kitchen drawer with takeout menus. Then came the second letter, then the third, each one sharper in tone, warning me about escalating penalties, threatening liens, even mentioning law enforcement involvement. That's when the confusion curdled into irritation. I called the number on the letter, hoping for a reasonable conversation. The woman on the other end acted like she was doing me a favor, even taking the call. When I explained my property wasn't under their HOA, she laughed. Actually laughed. Said, "That's what everyone says when they get caught." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. I tried diplomacy after that. I drafted a careful email, attached a copy of my deed, highlighted the legal description that excluded me from their subdivision covenants. No response. I printed out maps from the county assessor's office, circled my boundaries in red, and hand-delivered them to the HOA's little drop box. A week later, I found another notice taped to my garage door, this time accusing me of unapproved structures. Because apparently, my workshop offended their sense of order. They didn't even bother pretending to check their own jurisdiction. That was the moment the air shifted. I realized this wasn't about rules or oversight. It was about control. They wanted to stretch their reach past the line into land that wasn't theirs, because nobody had pushed back before. So I stopped writing emails. I stopped trying to explain. And I started reading property law. Nights became quieter, but heavier. I'd sit at the kitchen table with stacks of records from the courthouse, deeds dating back to when this land was still part of a larger farm. I combed through subdivision plats, zoning ordinances, even easements filed in the 70s. I requested the original survey, the one with coordinates hammered into steel pins still buried in the soil. Every letter they sent, I documented. Every phone call, I recorded. I walked the perimeter of my fence with a camera, time-stamped every post. When neighbors who used to wave started avoiding eye contact, I wrote that down too. My partner asked if it was worth it, if maybe we should just move somewhere else. I told him this wasn't about offense anymore, it was about principle. And then came the dawn raid. I woke up to the metallic whine of cutters snapping wire. By the time I threw on boots and stepped outside, 3 members of the HOA were already halfway through dismantling the western stretch of my fence. They didn't ask, didn't knock. They just acted. When I confronted them, the president puffed up and said I was trespassing on HOA land and they were reclaiming it. Her voice echoed with the smugness of someone who thought they'd won. But what she didn't know was that IT already filed for an injunction 2 days earlier. The judge, after reviewing the survey I submitted, signed off on a restraining order against any HOA action on my property. It was waiting in a folder on my desk, alongside the certified boundary survey with state seal still wet from the registrar's stamp. So instead of yelling, I walked inside, retrieved the documents, and handed them over like they were nothing more than a grocery receipt. Watching her expression collapse, seeing the confidence drain out as the weight of the law landed on her shoulders, that was the quietest, cleanest victory I be. Weber tasted. After that, everything unraveled for them. The HOA tried to save face, but once the injunction was on record, their threats turned to dust. Word spread through the neighborhood. A few homeowners started asking uncomfortable questions about why their fees were funding illegal campaigns against people outside their jurisdiction. The president resigned within a month, citing personal reasons. 2 board members followed. Their meetings, once filled with posturing and petty decrees, dwindled into awkward silences and empty chairs. My life settled back into what it was supposed to be. I rebuilt the section of fence they'd cut, this time with steel posts, sunk deep and braced with concrete. Nobody has touched it since. Neighbors who once avoided me now nod with a mix of respect and caution. Some wave, others turn their heads. Either way, the silence has returned, and that's all I wanted in the first place. Every now and then, I catch myself looking at that folder with the survey and the injunction inside. I keep it in a drawer, not because I expect to use it again, but because it reminds me of something simple. Peace isn't given, it's defended. And sometimes the best revenge is nothing more than watching the people who tried to break you realize, too late, that you knew the law better than they knew their own greed.